for the second round of this big show. This morning we speak about the patellofemoral joint, and I will try to give you everything about the patellofemoral joint from the beginning to the end. And I am sure that you will be you will know everything about X-rays, CT scan, and MRI after that. So the question is how to classify patellar dislocation and what to indicate to your patient to class them. I really want to thank you so much for this invitation, and thank you also to Sigascot to support this meeting, because it gives some power to your initiative, and I love it so much. I'm honored. So how to make a diagnosis? Questions to answers. Who knows nothing about patellofemoral joint, and even if you are a very, very bad surgeon, you will say, "Oh, I don't know why you dislocate your patella." And I hope that you will not be like that at the end of my talk. So where does this patellar dislocation lead? Definitely, iatrogenic surgery can lead to medial impingement because you have done a hypermedialization, wrong indication. Everything, you did the right surgery, and correct all the anatomical abnormalities, and you will be back to some normal anatomy. But when you dislocate your patella, you have some anatomical abnormalities, and definitely this is a huge factor to get isolated patellofemoral arthritis. And I remember you that in isolated patellofemoral arthritis, you have 78% of trochlear dysplasia. So the third question would be, is your patient will get a new episode of patellar dislocation? And this is very important, because if you have the first time patellar dislocation, maybe you don't need to do surgery, and probably you don't need to. And you need to have some knowledge to know if your patient could have a second or third patellar dislocation. So the questions are, what are the risk factors? Could you rate them? And are they predictive to get a new patellar dislocation? So we are back to 1987 with the instability factors described at that time. And they were trochlear dysplasia, patella alta, and tibia tuberosity, TTTG. And we start to have quite a lot of literature about that, not coming from Lyon, coming from outside, and this is what is very interesting. And some studies showed that definitely the risk factors are huge things in the recurrence of patellar dislocation. And the two biggest are the trochlear dysplasia and the patella alta. The TTTG is something important too, but you will never have isolated TTTG as a risk factor. So it's something combined to the trochlear dysplasia and to the patella alta. So these are the biggest factors. So the treatment that you will propose is totally different if you have some chondropathia or chondromalacia, which is a word I hate, and a patellar dislocation. So it's totally different, and you have to be very careful about that. So how to lead you to a classification. The first is the patient history, and it's very, very important to speak, to ask, to tease your patient to know exactly if he had a patellar dislocation, because sometimes it's difficult to know it. Then you have the clinical exam. The clinical exam is not so specific, but it will help you in the diagnosis. And then what is the most important to know is the radiology, because if you know the radiology, you will be able to say exactly that your patient had a patellar dislocation. Then you go to the classification, and then you will be able to give a proposal for a treatment. So these are the most important things when you speak with your patient and ask them. Instability is not a good word. Dislocation is a good word. And you could have some symptoms, feeling of instability, giving away, but it's always in the low energy activities. And sometimes your patient is coming to you and he or she says, "Doctor, I'm dislocating my patella." And sometimes they say, "I'm dislocating my patella internally, medially. I feel that for sure." So if you go fast and if you don't listen too much to your patient, you listen, she has a patellar dislocation, good, I do an MPFL, good for me. And sometimes you do MPFL for not the patellar dislocation, only for a feeling of instability, subjective instability, which is coming from a quadriceps inhibition. And sometimes it's very, very, very important. So this is what we call subjective instability. Totally different from the mechanical instability, where you have a true dislocation. And the first time you have a true dislocation, you always have MPFL rupture. And if you have an MPFL rupture, you have an hemarthrosis. So the first time you have that, always the knee is really big. And ask your patient about that. Ask the parents if it's an adolescent. And you have to know that the first time it's always with high energy activities, not going downstairs, not walking in the street. It's always a big activity. Then you ask about the family history, because you have 40% of family antecedent, and this would be the objective instability, the dislocation, objective dislocation. So we are back in 1987, and from 1987 to 2012, where we did the second patellar meeting in Lyon, we have clearly validated all the instability factors. The first one is the trochlear dysplasia, the second one is the patella alta, and the third is the malalignment, the TTTG, the excessive TTTG, and we make the tilt disappear from that instability factors. Because the patellar tilt is very important, of course, but the patellar tilt is a consequence of the trochlear dysplasia, of the patella alta, and the malalignment. So the tilt is no more an instability factor. So why this patellar dislocation is highly correlated to anatomy? In a dislocation population, 96% have trochlear dysplasia. So it's huge, so important. 30% has a patella alta, and 56% has a TTTG over 20 millimeter if you go to the CT scan. If you go to the other abnormalities like the femoral torsion, yes, you can see that we can have some excessive femoral torsion between 40 and 50%, but we don't have any threshold. So we cannot say that if it's more than 25 degrees or 35 degrees or 45 degrees, it will be abnormal. The tibial torsion, not significant also. And the MPFL rupture, of course, in 100%, you have an MPFL rupture. So now, if you look at the imaging, you will see that it's very important. The X-rays will will find out that you have some abnormalities. You can measure some things. The CT scan is mostly quantitative, and the MRI quantitative and qualitative, because you will be able to see the cartilage and the soft tissues. So we start first with the standard X-rays. Weight-bearing X-rays, AP, sagittal, and axial view at 30 degrees flexion. Exactly like yesterday when we were talking about ACL, same X-rays. And what you have to look at first is the knee trochlear dysplasia, and then measure the patellar height. So take the ruler and measure the patellar height. The trochlear dysplasia. How do you find the trochlear dysplasia? This is the crossing sign. It is pathognomonic of trochlear dysplasia. It means that at this precise point you will have a flat or even convex trochlea. If you look to the trochlea, you have 3 points: the medial facet, the groove, and the lateral facet of the trochlea. So if those 3 points are on a different level, and the groove is the most deep, no trochlear dysplasia, your trochlea is congruent. If you have trochlear dysplasia, this is a type D, the high-grade trochlear dysplasia. This is the lateral facet, you see. Then you have the groove, and then you have the medial facet. The double contour is a hypoplastic medial facet. So this is exactly what is a trochlear dysplasia. So always look at those 3 points, and you will be able to understand more the trochlear dysplasia. The trochlear dysplasia is really well seen on the lateral X-ray. We often speak about the axial view at 30 degrees flexion. Yes, it's important, but first of all, you need to have a good axial view at 30 degrees flexion. And to be sure that this is a good one, you have to you need to have 1/3 for the medial facet and 2/3 for the lateral facet. This is a good axial view at 30 degrees flexion. If you and it's very important, because if you are at 30 degrees flexion, you will see the upper part of your trochlea. So you will see the trochlear dysplasia. You will see maybe the subluxation like that. But if you have a radiologist who does a 45 degrees axial view, you will go a little bit distal to the trochlea, where the trochlea is much deeper, and you will miss everything. You will have a normal subluxus angle, no subluxation, you will miss everything. So the axial view has to be checked, and to be sure that it is well done. At the acute phases, what to look at on the X-rays? Loose body, intra-articular, you have to find some small fractures like that. You will see the MPFL avulsion sometimes. And of course, you are able to look at the trochlear dysplasia and the patella alta. So measure it and ask for good X-rays, not X-rays in torsion and rotation. Ask for good X-rays and push your radiologist to do some good X-rays. And then you can ask for an MRI, especially if you are dealing with immature patient, because you can have some osteochondral fracture that you will not be seen on the X-rays, and you will see them on the MRI. If you ask for an MRI, what to look at? Hemarthrosis. And what is very special, and it's beautiful, is the lipohemarthrosis. You see, this is fat, this is blood, and this is typical from a patellar dislocation, because when you have a patellar dislocation, you have hemarthrosis, of course, but most of the time you have an avulsion of the medial facet. So you will have some bone marrow going in the joint, and the lipohemarthrosis is quite specific of patellar dislocation. Look at osteochondral fracture, especially in children, and of course the MPFL rupture, and you will be sometimes able to locate the MPFL rupture on the medial side, mid part, or on the femoral side. So imagine in acute patellar dislocation, in skeletally immature, you need standard X-rays for sure. You need some MRI, definitely, because you have to look at this osteochondral fracture, because sometimes you can refix them, and you will see, of course, cartilage, trochlear, soft tissue, and DTPG, and tilt. In adults, it's a little bit different. You only need standard X-rays, good quality, of course, and you will ask for CT or MRI only if you have some high-grade instability factors, because the recurrence rate will be higher, and only if you plan to do surgery, because you will measure the TTPG, you will measure the tilt, but this is not mandatory at the beginning. You need X-rays, and with X-rays you see a lot of things. So, but CT scan and MRI, there is a little bit of fight. We used to use a lot the CT scan. Now we have more and more MRI. Whatever, we don't care. MRI and CT, you can do exactly the same. But when you ask for an MRI for a patellofemoral joint, you need to write a special prescription, because it has to go above the trochlea and below the tibial tuberosity. It's not an MRI for an ACL. It's totally different. So do a specific prescription for this MRI. And don't forget that the threshold values are different. If you use 20 mm for the TTTG, this is for CT scan. If you use an MRI, don't use 20. It's not 20, it's 30. So it's totally different, and you will not correct the same way if you don't know that. So be careful about that. So I will give you some tricks to understand better the classification, because this classification is used all over the world, but sometimes people don't really understand what is A, B, C, D. So some tricks to classify. You have three pillars for the trochlear dysplasia. First is a crossing sign. This is a groove line going up, and crossing both condyles. The second will be this supratrochlear spur. It's like a ski jump. It pushes the patella on the lateral side. And the third is the double contour, which is the hypoplastic medial facet. You can have only the crossing sign. You can have crossing sign and supratrochlear spur. You can have crossing sign and double contour, but sometimes you have only the crossing sign, okay? So you understand that it's not, you don't have all of them every time. And that depends on the grade of your trochlear dysplasia. So the criteria for a standard X-ray, first of all, good X-ray. Both condyles on the same line. That's mandatory. If you don't have that, it's not necessary to look at the trochlea, for sure. The second is the axial view. I told you that how to know if your axial view is well done or not. And then you will be able to look to the other one, the position of your patella and the AP. You can find some loose body. You can find some avulsion of the medial patella, some patella bipartita. So you take time to look at the AP, the sagittal, and the axial. That's so important. Then the trochlear classification. You need to have X-rays and slice imaging to classify the trochlea. If you have only X-rays, it's not perfect. If you have only slice imaging, it's really not perfect. So X-rays will show the bump, this, and you cannot miss that. You really remember this X-ray. You cannot miss the crossing sign, and you cannot miss the double contour if you have. But it's not sufficient to do the classification. And when we did that, we use X-rays and CT scan. So you need to add the slice imaging, CT scan or MRI, because the CT scan and the MRI will show you the shape of the trochlea. It will tell you if it's flat, if it's convex, if it's concave. Okay. So using this and this, you will be able to say A, B, C, D. Because, for example, the proeminence, this big proeminence, it's very tough to see that on an MRI. Very tough. On the CT, even worse. So you will miss that. So remember that if you want to classify your trochlea, you need to have X-rays and slice imaging. Very important. Type A, you have the Blumensack line here. You follow the group line, and you have this crossing sign. So type A, the most frequent one, is a normal trochlea, but the trochlea is a little bit shallow. Okay, but you have a medial facet, collateral facet. The type B, 17%, you will have the crossing sign, of course, but you have that proeminence above the anterior cortex. And the trochlea is totally flat on the MRI or on the CT. But you have to understand also that it's not A, B, C, D, and it's going up, up, up. B is different from A, but it's different from C. But C is not bigger than B. It's different. This is something important to understand. Then the type C, which is the most difficult one to pick up, because you have the crossing sign, but you have no proeminence. So if your X-ray is not perfect, you will maybe miss the double contour, because you have only the double contour and the crossing sign. And this is exactly that. Hypoplastic medial facet, lateral convexity of the lateral facet, but no proeminence. So this is very difficult to correct, and this is, for example, it's not a very good indication for trochleoplasty. And then the type D, which combine everything. You have the crossing sign, you have the supratrochlear spur, you have the double contour, and this is exactly what is a type D. So you understand that when you have such trochlea, impossible to make your patella stable in front of that, even with the best MPFM. So do you have understood how to classify the trochlear dysplasia, and it's very important so to use X-rays and slice image. So here again, it's just to show you that you use those 3 points, and using these 3 points, you will be able to know if your trochlea is concave, flat, or convex. Okay. So this classification will show you that type B and D, they have the proeminence. So these are the best indication, for example, for trochleoplasty, because you will remove the proeminence. Then the second factor, the patella alta, 30% in the dislocation population, and you can use different index. The most useful one is a Caton-Deschamps index, because it's it is a very good surgical index. You have the ratio, it's 30 on 20, and you will correct them just to bring back to a normal ratio. If you use insult salvati as the landmark of the tibial tuberosity, so when you do a distalization, you will stay with the same index. So it's not a real good surgical index. About patella alta, you have to extend a little bit the things. And you will have the patella engagement in the trochlea. And Bernageau in 1984 described this patellar engagement on the X-rays in full extension, but the X-rays was tough because sometimes They were in recurvatum, sometimes a little bit in flexion. So, but he described this engagement, the patellar engagement in the trochlea. Then Bieder described the patellotrochlear index, very nice, because it quantifies the engagement of the patella in the trochlea. The Bieder index is good, but if you have a subluxation of your patella, you will not be able to measure it. So that's why we change a little bit the way to measure this sagittal engagement index in 2013. And it's a good value to show if your patella is in the trochlea or not in the trochlea, even if you have a patella alta or not a patella alta. So you will see later why it is so important. So it is exactly that. And for example, when you have some X-ray, CT scan or MRI, sometimes you can see that you have a beautiful trochlea, but you have no patella in front of the trochlea, because the patella is above the trochlea. Or you can have a patella, but no trochlea in front. So it's a good indirect sign of patella alta and a functional patella alta. So this is exactly that, what we are talking about, the sagittal engagement. You take two cuts, the one where you see perfectly the patella, the other one where you see perfectly the trochlea, and you do that ratio, and you will be able to know the engagement of your patella. When you have a patella alta, you know that the patellar tendon insertion is always at the same level. The sound is not. The sound is maybe too strong. We have some Larsen. The insertion of the patella is always the same, and when you have a patella alta, you have a long patellar tendon, more than 52 millimeters. So this is the abnormality of a patella alta. So what's going on? We have seen that the shape of the patella is also important. And, you can use the Weber classification in three type, 1, 2, 3, and the 4 does exist also, and sometimes this is this one that you can maybe correct and do a patellar osteotomy. Very, very rare. Then we move to the third risk factor, which is a PTTG that we measured on the CT scan or on MRI, and you can do both, MRI or CT, whatever, not a problem. And remember that the threshold is different from the CT to the MRI, 20 for the CT, 13 for the MRI. Remember that. And remember also that it's never a single instability factor. So it's important for sure, but it's not as important as the trochlear dysplasia or the patella alta. The tilt, okay, we used to quantify the tilt and say that it was an instability factor, but in fact it is a consequence of the trochlear dysplasia and the MPFL rupture, and of course the hemarthrosis. So the screening of your patient after the first dislocation would be if you have some low instability factors. If you deal with children, ask for X-rays, but ask for an MRI. Mandatory to ask for an MRI. If you have an adult, only X-rays, and maybe you will ask for an MRI later. If you have high instability factors, children, adults, you have X-rays, of course, mandatory, but you need to have also some slice imaging, because the recurrence rate will be big, important. So you will have to measure the TTTG, the tilt, the sagittal engagement of your patella. So this is the way to screen your patient and to deal with that. So now how to manage those patients and what is important. Children, adults is a little bit different, and you have the low instability and the high instability factors because the evolution of the patient will be totally different. And where is your patient? Your patient could be in the population of a patellar painful syndrome. He feels some instability. He tells you that he has a patellar dislocation, but you look into the X-rays, no trochlear dysplasia, no patellar altar, so you know perfectly that this patient will don't need any surgery at all, So this is the best way to show to your patient you are normal. So please leave me quiet. You understand what I mean? The second population will be the objective patellar dislocation. They have some risk factor, at least the trochlear dysplasia, patellar altar, excessive TTG, and they add a dislocation for sure. So this is maybe the population where you can ask for surgery. And in between, this is the potential patellar instability. So surgery or conservative treatment, you have many things to read and to understand what you can do. So the surgical algorithm would be this one. If you have an excessive TTG, you will correct it and you will bring it back between 10 and 15 if you use CT, between 8 and 13 if you use MRI. You correct the abnormality. If and it's very easy because you take the value you have on your MRI or on your CT, and you take your ruler, and during surgery you will correct it. Never do any advancement. Advancement means nothing. It doesn't work. The Fulgus osteotomy, I can say that because we are not in US, is very bad surgery for me. Probably because the Fulgus didn't know the difference between pain and instability. They was doing that for everybody, saying it's okay, I will do correct maybe things. So no advancement, please. Patellar down, you will crystallize the patella and you will engage the patella in the trochlea and you will correct the pain and the instability. And when you do a distalization, you will do also a medialization. It's an automatic because it's due to the shaft of your tibia. So you will engage the patella in the trochlea. So it's very simple. You measure 30 on 20, you correct 10, and you will bring back the patella in the trochlea. And this is important about the sagittal engagement. For example, you can have a patient who has a patella alta, 1.2. Look at the MRI, and if you look at the MRI, this one has a good sagittal engagement. Okay, the patella is engaged. You don't need to do any distalization because the patella is already in the trochlea. The same patient with this MRI, no sagittal engagement, if you do only an MPFL, your results will not be perfect. And it will still feel unstable. So you need to add a distalization, 5 mm, just to engage the patella in the trochlea. Then, about MPFL. Yes, you have to reconstruct MPFL every time, because every time the MPFL is torn. So this is mandatory to do it. The best indication for an MPFL is a low-grade trochlear dysplasia, small trochlear dysplasia, type A, no patella alta, no excessive TTG. This is the best indication for an MPFL, but I will associate an MPFL to any procedure I do. Medialization, distalization, trochleoplasty. And deepening trochleoplasty, you have to restore the anatomy, and you understand that when you have such trochlear dysplasia, you have to do something, and you will try to do a proximal alignment to move the trochlea a little bit more lateral and to remove that bump. This is the goal of trochleoplasty. So at the end, to treat that, I would say that if you have 2 or 3 patellar dislocation, yes, you can propose to do surgery, not for the first one. I will never push to do the surgery on the first patellar dislocation. If you have a high feeling of instability or apprehension, and then you identify all the instability factors and you correct them one by one. This is the key. It's finished. Some questions?